is Verinia Michalun. I am part of the team that's working on this project on industrial transition, and I will be moderating today. So before I turn this over to our speakers, just to let you know that we're about 30 participants both here in the room and online. And we have some other people that will be joining us as well that are in the room, but as observers who are also participating. This webinar is going to be recorded, and I would like to remind everyone here in person to please use your microphones because that's the only way that people online can hear you. And also remind our participants who are online to raise your hands and use the chat to speak up anytime you would like to ask questions or comment. On behalf of the OECD, I really want to welcome you here. And we have a very full agenda, so I am not going to spend too much time. I'm actually going to turn the floor over immediately to Stefan Appel, who is head of Unit European Semester and Economic Analysis at DG Regio and the European Commission. Stefan, please.
Many thanks, Varinia, and welcome from me from Brussels. Very good to see so many people around the globe interested in good governance. This was also my subject until quite recently in DG Regio, so I'm very happy that even in my new function, good governance is a very important subject. I think it's always good to learn from each other. I'm very happy to see not only European Union, but also members from Canada and United States in this seminar, which is the first seminar, I understand, in the framework of this common project of the European Commission and the OECD. And this aims to provide a transatlantic perspective to regional development for industrial transition. I think we all agree that these are quite challenging times for our industries and that there are many components needed to make a regional industrial transition successful. And there is no magic recipe or a one-size-fits-all. Any solution must be rooted in the specific context, the specific endowments, needs, and challenges of the region in question. And governance in this context is a key issue. Those who are in the European Union will certainly know that in the current policy legislative framework for cohesion policy for 21-27, there is an obligatory requirement to have good governance in place of the national and regional smart specialization strategies. It's a so-called thematic enabling condition. But it's also clear that assessment of past periods have shown there is still a need to upgrade the quality of governance to be able to implement policies. So what does good governance mean, a strategic and efficient good governance? I think there are many terms which come to mind: engagement, collaboration, leadership, trust, adaptability, reactivity, vision, planning, administrative capacity. This is not an exhaustive list, but it's already a long list. And what does this mean? I think all these terms, they need content. So how to ensure engagement? What does leadership mean? Is there an ideal model of governance, or should we encourage experimentations of structures in order to involve the players more into the development? So a lot of questions where this project hopefully will deliver some answers or some recommendations, some guidance, because policymakers are also confronted with trade-offs. Just to name some, on the one hand, you need time to consult all relevant stakeholders to build a strong and trusted partnership. On the other hand, you need reactivity and flexibility to seize opportunities to act quickly. Or coming from DG Regio, from the Regional Policy Department of the Commission, regional transition is a place-based process. It needs place-based elements. On the other hand, we have wider priorities, and we need to develop these priorities also to pursue synergies with other policy instruments, which is not always so easy to combine. So we have certainly different institutional, administrative, and cultural backgrounds being here in the room, but I think there's a lot we can learn from each other. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing from the various experiences here in the room. And I give back the floor to Varinia and Dorothy. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan, very much. And I'd like now to turn the floor to Dorothée Alain-Dupré, who is the head of Division for Regional Development and Multi-Level Governance here at the OECD.
Thank you, Varanya, and thank you very much, Stefan, for your introductory remarks and for setting the scene so clearly. Good afternoon to all. Good morning to those who are also online with us. It's really great to see such a strong engagement for this work, for this first workshop on this project, so Regional Development Policy for Industrial Transition, a Transatlantic Perspective. Many thanks, of course, to the European Commission DG Regio for their support with this work and the excellent cooperation on this project. So this workshop is the first group learning activity of the project. It launches actually a series of opportunities for shared reflection, exchange, and collaboration with all of you. We begin, as Stefan said, with a topic that is both fundamental and cross-cutting for various types of industrial transition, which is the topic of governance, multi-level governance. We would like actually to use today's discussion to build a shared understanding and a common, let's say, governance language that will anchor the rest of our work together. We also hope to start identifying with you practical governance strategies and institutional approaches that help regions manage industrial transition in a coordinated, inclusive, and future-ready way. So why this topic? Why multi-level governance? The OECD work on industrial transition, which began in 2017, has found that effective governance is an enabler of successful industrial transition. And let me share briefly three reasons why this is the case. First, not all regions experience transition in the same way, and you know this very well. And regions need to have the capabilities to manage them in a proactive way. And I just want maybe to give one example linked to digitalization and AI. Around 26% today of workers across all OECD countries are exposed to generative AI, but this ranges from 13% to 48% across regions. So you see the wide differences. And we know that regions that were at a lower risk of automation are now among the most exposed, in fact, to generative AI. I could take many other examples of other global challenges like climate change or demographic change, but this is just to show that to manage transition effectively, because of this highly asymmetric impact within countries, regions need the resources and the capacity, the governance capacity, to identify the impact of transition trends at the regional level and to prepare in a proactive way. Second reason, industrial transition is a complex process. It calls for action by all levels of government and a wide network of actors, as mentioned by Stefan. And some of the preconditions include clearly communicated roles and responsibilities, mechanisms to support a cross-sectoral, multi-stakeholder approach, and building capacities to implement policies and programs. And third, when policies, what the first project has shown us is that really when policymakers have room to adjust their approach and to experiment, the results may be stronger and more apparent. And for example, East and North Finland experimented with a new funding mechanism that allowed regional councils to directly fund SME and R&D institutions in the forestry industry. And this has led the national government to make adjustment in its approach to SME funding. So governance systems that support experimentation can foster new ideas and yield results through learning by doing. And this is very important to say and to communicate. They create space for policymakers to test and adjust activities. So this seminar today is designed to be highly practical, focusing on the how of industrial transition, how the policies and initiatives to support transition processes are designed and implemented. The expert paper developed for this seminar introduced a practical framework for understanding how multi-level governance supports industrial transition. It is illustrated with international examples that shows what works in practice. It was developed by Tamara, who is online with us and who will present it in a few minutes. And the 3 roundtables that we will have in this seminar are designed to go behind the scenes of regional transition initiatives, exploring which policies and actions were put into motion, who drove them, and how they were implemented. Every region has its own context and starting point, yet facing many similar challenges. So throughout the discussions, we hope to build insight into what is transferable, the tools, the methods, the practices that others can adapt and scale in their own setting. And the seminar is not just about showcasing good practices, but also about learning together what makes these practices work and how they can be replicated elsewhere. So the success of this seminar really depends on your active participation and openness to share and to learn through this transatlantic network. Your experiences will also serve as a source of inspiration for other regions beyond this project. So thank you again very much to all of you for your engagement, for being with us today or online. And we really look forward to hearing from you. Thanks a lot. Back to you, Beth.
Thank you, Dorothée, very much. And just to round this out, since this is our first opportunity to learn with each other and from each other, I think we also need to get to know each other. So one way we can start to do that is to go first around the room, and each region has the opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we will go online to our online regions. I am going to be obsessed with time. So I'm just going to model this introduction just to make sure we keep it really short. So please, as you introduce yourself, introduce your name, your organization, and share one sentence about what your region would want to learn from this seminar. So for example, my name is Verinia Michalun, I'm with the OECD, and I would like to learn how governance arrangements have affected your ability to advance transition measures. That actually is what I want to know, and that is a very OECD sentence. So perhaps we can now start with North Rhine-Westphalia.
Hello, everyone, and good morning. My name is Christoph Vetter. I'm a professor at the University of Applied Science in North Rhine-Westphalia, and we are working close together. As you can see, that we are a group of 5 or 6 if you add our partner from the United States. And what I would like to learn today is how could financement for the cooperation between the European country and the United States of America also be sustainable through the years or the decades?
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Sabine Engel. I work at the University of Minnesota at the Institute on the Environment. We have a flourishing cooperation with North Rhine-Westphalia. It has totally transformed what we do and what we aim for in Minnesota. What I would like to learn today is very much along the lines of what Christoph Vetter said. How do we put together a package in order to enable this kind of collaboration in a way that inspires also other Europeans or even other Europeans, so that the learning is not only focused on the people involved in it.
Maya.
Hi, everybody. My name is Maja Cipic-Nidar. I'm from the Regional Development Agency of Zasavje. It's the small region in Slovenia, small industrial region. And today, I hope I will learn from others' experiences and share our own lesson on how to make a just transition or industrial transition more practical, collaborative, and successful for people and communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Finland.
You could go first, but maybe I'm the head of the delegation here. So my name is Tanja Joona. I'm a professor of Arctic Sustainability Science at the University of Lapland. We have a research institution called Arctic Center there, so I'm a professor there. And Lapland hopes to learn how research, expert collaboration, and decision-making can better be integrated to secure solutions for the green transition.
Thank you. Emilia-Romagna.
My name is Daniela Ferrara, and I'm from Emilia-Romagna region. I'm very happy to be here to be part of this project. Together with me, there is Paolo Rosso, that is an expert of our region working with us. I'm particularly, I'm working on cohesion funds. I'm the managing authority of the two ERDF and ESF funds. So we are now really in the phase of trying to reshape our governance system. And we would really like to learn from that seminar and from that project which common challenges do the regions are facing when they are trying to reshape their governance systems for industrial transition. So that's our intention. Thank you.
Sounds we're aligned.
Hello, everybody. I'm Simone Jung from Stuttgart Region Association. And as we are responsible for regional planning, regional mobility, and economic development, I would like to learn more from other regions, how they tackle industrial transition and what tools they have experimented and how they get it integrated into long-term sustainable development policies. If that's possible.
Hello, everybody. My name is Cristina Ollón. I come from the Basque Country in Spain. I'm representing the Regional Development Agency of the Basque government. And well, from this seminar and this project, I would like to gain some perspective and to be not in the day-to-day business, but to share with all of us how we are tackling a new industrial transition in our region, in this case, the energy and decarbonization transition, and to share with you what we are doing and get your advice also. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah from the Provincial Development Agency of Limburg in Belgium. And I'm very curious who were the main drivers in your region for the transformation, and also who were the main partners? And then also how can we align this internationally with other partners and see who are the best partners in that case to take it further?
Oops, thank you very much. I'd like to now go online, so we'll continue the table virtually and invite Houston to join us and introduce themselves. Oops, I think we
Hi,
can't.
good morning or good afternoon. My name is Laura. Good morning. My name is Laura Goldberg, and I am with Center for Houston's Future. We're a nonprofit, and I'm very interested in learning perspectives and advice from around the world on successfully navigating today's political environment.
Thank you very much. And now turning to Indiana County in Pennsylvania.
Hello, my name is Eric Lauber. I'm a retired professor from Indiana University of Pennsylvania and the executive director of our Technology and Entrepreneurship Center with my partners from Ben Franklin Technology Partners. My questions are, how do we navigate the industrial transition? We have, from the paper that I read, I think we're in stage 4, industry phase out with economic diversification. I'm interested in learning more about how do we do that successfully.
Thank you very much. We always like precision. Northern Virginia, please.
Hi, my name is Dale Medeiros. I'm a senior regional planner for the Northern Virginia Regional Commission. It's a council of governments representing the 13 counties, cities, and towns of Northern Virginia, that is the suburbs directly across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C. And we are interested in basically learning more about how local governments prioritize and plan strategies that guide their global engagement, that deliver benefits to their local governments, leading to environmental, economic, and social outcomes.
Thank you very much. And now we'll go further north to Ontario.
Everyone. Amanda Wooters here. So I'm the Director of Regional Economic Development with Ontario's Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation, and Trade. So my team is kind of at the intersection between policy and program work, really around innovation and economic partnerships. So what we're interested in learning today is just experiences from others around the table of how they've navigated industrial transition, and particularly layering on, emerging priorities. AI and defense are top of mind for us. So just kind of those are key things for today. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. We have two participants from Quebec from two different organizations. So perhaps the participant from the ministry could start, please.
Yes, I think it's me. Benjamin, I work for, I'm a senior advisor at the Department of Innovation Zone for the Ministry of Economy, Innovation, and Energy. We're really interested to learn about key lessons, key success factors of various projects, mostly place-based initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our final Quebec participant from INQ, please.
Yes, hello, my name is Émilie Fortin-Lefebvre. I'm a professor at University of Quebec in Montreal, and I work also for Institut Nordique du Québec, INQ, and I'm the director of the Study Center for Indigenous Peoples' Economic Autonomy. And my question would be, what can we learn from Indigenous peoples on how to develop a multi-level governance that benefits to local and regional development?
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I think I've got everyone. If I have missed someone, please say so. Okay. We are on time. So far, so good. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our agenda because it's very, very full, as I'm sure you've seen. We will spend the next maybe 15 to 20 minutes on a presentation that goes more in depth on the paper that was circulated, and Tamara will be joining us in a moment online. After that, we go to our first roundtable, which really focuses on the strategic middle, on strategic planning. All of the three roundtable sessions that we will be having today very much focus on specific points of the paper that Tamara prepared. The second topic will be on policy experimentation, and then the final one will have to do with, and that is I'm going to find that, shaping collaboration and stakeholder engagement. But I don't want to take too much time away from Tamara, and we can now begin bringing in both the academic insights to combine them with very practical policy examples. Not only what Tamara will share, but also the examples from around the room. And really to start exploring this framework to help understand governance for transition. And then we'll go into these individual pieces. So Tamara, it's great to see you. Tamara Krachenko, who is an associate professor at the School of Public Administration at the University of Victoria. It's in British Columbia. It's very early for her. So Tamara, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my slides. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Tamara, can you put them on full screen? There you go. Okay.
And I just want my notes view, which I don't see here. Sorry, one moment. How does that work for you? Is that okay?
It's okay. We don't see your notes. We just see the screen.
Okay, thank you. So it's such a pleasure to be engaging in this work, and I think it will make such a huge contribution, all of this comparative learning. I'm joining you from Tsim territory in Prince Rupert, British Columbia at the moment. And this is a northern community, it's remote, and it's really experiencing a substantial economic transition right now. There's strategic port expansions for energy exports to diversify to Asian markets. There's a lot of Indigenous-led development here. And so transitions, whenever I study transitions around the world, and whenever I start a presentation, I always want to reflect on recognizing that this is about people and their communities and that there's a lot of stake to get this right. It's such a pleasure to engage in this European Commission DG Regio OECD project, focusing on this ambition to transform geography of discontent into one of possibility. And this paper that I was tasked to do, I found it quite challenging, I'll be honest. And I wanted to offer a lot of practical examples, so I really tried to find them. And I'm not certain that I always sorted them in the right way or described them in the right way. And I welcome engagement on that. And actually, if anyone would like to collaborate on developing this further, I totally welcome that as well. Strategic governance is this critical enabling structure to guide and coordinate industrial transition processes. And it helps them actors move collectively. And so this paper looks at these topics through 4 very much interrelated elements, and I'll go over those. But first, I'd like us to consider how I think about transitions, which is through this sort of typology that I've developed, imperfect typology. We can refine this, we can improve it. But I really find that transitions have such different features in different places, and that this has implications for policy and governance. And in this typology, what I really want to emphasize is what I see as cascading levels of risk involved, and that this changes the role of how governments operate and how actors operate on the ground. We can think, for instance, of this first type where there is new and emergent industries. So this can be the creation or expansion of sectors like critical minerals or advanced manufacturing or digital industries. And this would be requiring investments in innovation and infrastructure and workforce skills. A lot of it could be built upon existing activities like innovation clusters, or it could be developing new locations. And we often see these in both metropolitan or rural and remote areas. It depends on what's happening in that ecosystem. And there are lots of examples of this. Skipping forward, think of a different type of transition where we might have industry phase out, a big industry, one that was really important in the economy, say, even 20% of employment in a place. And the goal of that industry phase out is collectively economic diversification. So it's a very different type of scenario. And in that type of case, policymakers tend to work to foster multiple sectors. And this tends to be quite challenging in regions with limited existing alternatives. It can require sustained investment in infrastructure, education, entrepreneurship, and so on. And I always try to think of some examples. And here I thought maybe Sweden's forest sector manufacturing declined, and they had diversification efforts based on an emphasis on developing SMEs, or in the Bay of Plenty in New Zealand, from the forest sector manufacturing towards tourism, for instance, just as some examples. Then there's a really tough type, which is where there's industry phase out and it's really unclear what would happen as an alternative economic activity. And I think closure of mining communities is probably most illustrative of this case. And that requires a really different type of sustained and activity to support communities like that. So this typology is depicting different types, and we can critique this, but it's really also looking at different cascading levels of risk and thinking about what it means to manage these processes. As you were talking, I added a slide. So I have questions that you asked, that I asked, and I said, transitions aren't new. Regions have transitioned historically. I looked across OECD countries at sub-regional economies that had substantial declines in industrial employment and tried to figure out what happened and how things were managed. And that work identified across 24 countries, 74 regions, and 120 odd subregions. And I tried to sort everything. And I developed this typology of transition management policies. And this is what I saw as happening in these places. And you can see regional development is really important there. And then governance is highlighted as the glue. So I'm just pointing to that work. It's imperfect work, but this is my big picture making sense of what I saw. And the vast majority of policies that I saw were workforce development policies for the most part in those regions. Now, to come to strategic planning, an ideal process might look something like this. This is adapted from the work of Lurbach, and it starts with long-term visioning and then road mapping towards this tactical area, working then on operational transition projects, and then monitoring and evaluation. And so the strategic sphere, this is all about defining long-term visions and goals. And some examples that come to mind are from Saarland, Germany, and Wales, UK, where they had scenario planning to guide coal phase-outs and heavy industry restructuring. Other examples like the Bay of Plenty in New Zealand and in Ontario, which used foresight workshops to envision new economic pathways and workforce needs with some of those transitions. And these exercises often feed into participatory roadmaps. A related approach under strategic planning, which I wasn't so aware of, is backcasting, which is unlike forecasting, where you're projecting into the future. Backcasting begins by articulating a desirable future state and then identifying, working backwards to all of the policies and technologies and actions and collaborations that get there. The tactical stage translates the vision into practical strategies. This can involve, for instance, creating transition pathways, for instance, coalition management, institutional brokerage, and so on. And I tried to give some examples of that. At the operational level, what you try to tend to do is pilot and scale innovations. This can be a space of experimentation. And I've given a few examples, for instance, from Basque Country in Spain and Caen in France, where there have been policy labs and innovation clusters to test new approaches. Another example might be Lithuania's Manufacturing Innovation Valley, which is part of the digital innovation hubs, where you test before you invest and enable SMEs to prototype and validate new technologies. This reflexive dimension, which we'll come back to, is about social learning, recalibration, understanding what's happening, because these are such complex processes, and targeting as you go. But I want to come back to this typology of transitions and think about how you might need much greater supports from upper level governments in the more risky types of transitions and what that means for strategic planning. And we can also differentiate here between proactive and reactive transitions. So when you have a proactive one, you're going to have a longer time horizon. It's much easier to plan. You can have that very, strategic planning process. But reactive ones have to mobilize quickly, and that really changes the nature of the strategic planning work, and it's much harder to do. And of course, all of this takes capacity. And so let's think also about what's happening in different regions and whether or not they have the capacity to engage in strategic planning processes in these ways and what they need to be successful, of course. Multi-level governance arrangements, we know why this is important. We just had a great introduction to why this is so critical. And I wanted here just to point out some examples of how I see these things working, and to stress from my end, from how I view this, is that we just have really different national contexts, a lot of different, existing institutional structures. I hesitate to say there's a best way for any place, and I think ways evolve. And so here is what I see as some examples. In Spain and Italy, I find, in my view, in what I understand, that they have adopted quite strongly regionalized approaches, where there's integrated multi-level governance into formal agreements between national and regional governments, unions, and other stakeholders, exemplified by these national just transition agreements. And I find that very intriguing for Canada, where I'm sitting, and I think a very, very important practice, because it gives such stability and because of how those agreements have been negotiated for such particularities of those regions. South Korea is a different approach. This is more nationally directed, it's hierarchical, and the central state establishes comprehensive transition strategies, like in the Korean New Deal, and then allocates resources and sets targets and so on. And And then there are other approaches, like in New Zealand, is a very interesting approach. I would call it kind of bottom-up regional multi-level governance framework from the previous government, highly participatory, but it came from a regulatory change, which was to no longer allow permits for offshore oil and gas. And so the government kind of set a framework and then encouraged bottom-up engagement. And I think this is a really interesting case for participatory governance that we can learn from. But all to say, there are different approaches and many leading practices, I think. I find that countries that manage to create frameworks where there's stability or predictability where there's persistent incentives for policy and behavior are very important in terms of the duration of how these different governance frameworks are managed on the ground. I'm trying to, because of Verinia, really be on time. So please tell me cut me off if I'm going too long.
You've got about another couple minutes.
Yeah, okay, I'll be quick. So, of course, as much as multi-level governance is critical, so too is cross-sectoral collaboration. And the literature emphasizes this importance of having a shift from siloed sector-specific policy frameworks to ones that broker, coordinate, and so on. And I wanted to give examples of what this can look like. A lot of this is quite new, and so it's tough work integrating strategies across input, production, distribution, adjacent sectors, and so on. Analytically, this type of work is quite underdeveloped, and that's what I understand from the literature and from my own studies, and that a lot of policy is still anchored in single sector logics. But I wanted to give some examples. Just to note one, this idea of transition arenas is quite interesting. And these are open, creative stakeholder engagement and reflexive policy learning platforms, participatory platforms. And one example of this is it's Norway's accelerating, I'm losing the acronym here for a moment, accelerating energy and sustainability transitions project, which convened a transition arena around port authorities, businesses, and local governments to co-create strategies. So just to highlight one of these examples, there are lots of others. And I think, while these are in boxes, the practices actually draw quite a bit on one another if you look at what they're doing. And so lots of examples for us to understand and explore. Monitoring, learning, and evaluation, as we know, is so critical, and there's a lot to say on this topic. In this short paper, what I wanted to focus on is what those different transition typologies might mean for different types of monitoring and evaluation frameworks. So just as one example, where you're doing the management of phase out and replacement of industries, like if you're transitioning from coal mining to renewables or manufacturing or high tech or something, you need longitudinal tracking, worker and stakeholder surveys, policy support evaluation. And that type of work will look different than other types of work. So industries, for instance, that are being phased out in regions where there's fewer prospects for replacement and diversification. In that case, you really want to map social vulnerability, safety nets, evaluating attempts to repurpose infrastructure or land assets. So just wanted to add some nuance around what I see as potentially different in different types of transitions, and also the participatory element, which is so critical. So the most robust evaluation frameworks that I have seen have arisen from really deep community and interest holder engagement. And I mentioned the Taranaki framework in New Zealand. That one was so interesting because it's one of the few examples I have of where Maori knowledge systems and values were very much integrated into the evaluation. I find that quite a unique approach. And of course, participatory evaluation helps ensure that there's community understanding and value in those processes. So just to conclude, across all of this, I think we can see, regional institutions are so critical. There are these boundary spanners. It's why they're so important for transitions management. Of course, this requires capacity, and we always have to think about what's the nature of the transition, what's happening in the region, and what their capacity looks like to be successful. Participatory engagement across all the literature, all the practice is so critical. And when we think about proactive versus reactive transition management approaches, that can be quite challenged. So how do we work in different types of spaces to achieve that? Multi-level governance and integration is so critical. And on that point, they reconfigure not just economies, but social contracts. And so leadership is so critical, and it can come from different places. And I think it's important to distinguish between different types of leadership within that. Political actors typically convene and align different interests, whereas industry and community leaders often foster experimentation and learning. And then reflexive governance. So again, coming back to this learning mechanism, these mechanisms underpin both accountability and innovation in policy and practice. And so in some cases, there might be a weak learning culture for initiatives, for instance, or things might be one-off or short-term. And so thinking of the incentives to actually carry this out and do this work well. And I'll leave you on a final point. Transitions, of course, they're uncertain, they're risky, yet we can think of how we can turn this into opportunity. And that requires, of course, not only technical solutions, but leadership and narrative legitimacy and a commitment to shared prosperity. And so this transition moment is such an important inflection point, and it's a chance to rebuild confidence and cohesion and capacity and trust and so on. So such important work you're doing. I look forward to learning from all of you. And I thank you so much again for the opportunity to chat with you and share some of my work. And I look forward to learning more as the project goes on. Thank you.
Great. Tamara, thank you very much. And also for really highlighting a few points that I'm just going to bring up. This notion that cross-sector collaboration is rather new, and it's so fundamental to industrial transition because of its complexity. Also, the importance of leadership and the fact that we're in a constant learning process. I think those are really critical points. We are already a little behind, but do we have one burning question? Does anyone have a question that they would like to ask Tamara before we move on? And it's okay if someone does. Not online either? No? Okay. Tamara, it looks like you covered it. Thank you so much. I would now then like to move to our next session, which is our next point on our agenda, which is our first roundtable called The Strategic Middle and Regions at the Heart of Multi-Level Governance to Support Industrial Transition. What we'd like to do now for the next, 40 minutes or so, is to look at issues that were touched upon in Tamara's presentation, particularly strategic planning, priority setting, exploring this collaborative and cross-sectoral dimension and what that means for driving transition forward and aligning priorities, both from the national and the regional level. What we're going to do is we're going to start with an opening presentation. This is going to be the same format for all three sessions. An opening presentation followed by a panel discussion, and then we'll open the floor for questions. Our first presentation is actually a video. So it's a video by Patrick Beauchesne, who is the CEO of Société du Plan Nord and the government of Quebec in Canada. Why don't we go ahead?
Hi everyone, my name is Patrick Beauchesne. I'm the CEO of the Société du Plan Nord. It's a great pleasure for me today to take a few minutes to present what is the Société du Plan Nord and on which important issues we are working on for the Northern and Arctic territory of Quebec. If we take a few steps back, in 2011, the government of Quebec saw the establishment of a 20-year strategic vision for the North. That was mainly based on sustainable development vision, economic development also, mainly on hydropower, energy, mining resources, and of course, forest management. This led to, in 2015, to the creation of a government agency, which is the Société du Plan Nord, which is dedicated to the sustainable development of Northern Territory, which is the north of the 49 parallel. It's a common ground of 1.2 million square kilometers, so it's the equivalent of two times the territory of France So it's a very large territory on which the population, overall population, is around 140,000 people. So the density of the population is very little, but still there is a tremendous potential for sustainable development on that territory. The mission for Société Plan Nord is in the sustainable development perspective, of course, to work in collaboration with the representative of the regions, the First Nation and the Inuits community. We are working closely with the Cree First Nation, the Naskapi First Nation, the Innu, and also the Inuits of Nunavik, and of course the private sector. Its mission is to contribute the integrated and coherent development of Quebec in keeping with the government keys direction. So we are working with more than 25 ministry or government organization to the implementation of the Nordic Action Plan. I will come back on that a little bit early in this presentation. We have a specific governance structure, working with, of course, a minister which is responsible for the Société du Plan Nord. We are under the Natural Resources and Forest Ministry. So our minister is Mr. Jean-François Simard. We have, like most of the government agency, a board of directors formed with around 14 people, mainly from the territory. We have representative of the 3 First Nation and Inuits on the board of directors. Société du Plan Nord, we are 90 people spread in the head office here in Quebec, but also in the Northern Territory. We have offices in Sept-Îles, Bécomo, in Chibougamau and Roberval also. And a specific that we have related to the board member is the Assembly of Partners. They act like a consultative body for the Société du Plan Nord. We have 30 members on that, main representative from Indigenous nation. We have also representative of each of sector of activity. So we have people from Hydro-Québec for green energy. We have people from the forest industry, mining industry. We have people from research, wildlife, environment, educational, cultural area. So it's a large spread of people that represents all the issues of the Northern and Arctic territory. So the Société du Plan Nord is responsible for the implementing of government strategy with Northern partners to address economic, social, and environmental development issues. We meet with local stakeholders to understand their need and to improve their living condition. Of course, we rely on the Assembly of Partners as a consultative body to provide recommendation. Since those representatives came from the territory, there are our eyes and our ears to tell us what importance, what priorities we should work on. So this collaboration contributes to the vitality and prosperity of northern regions, and by extension, the province of Quebec as a whole, because as you may know, most of the mining activities on the Northern Territory, most of the production of the hydropower is in the Northern Territory, and also for the forest management. So there is a lot of economic activity on the northern part of Quebec, but that has a tremendous impact for southern communities. A quick overview of what the Northern Quebec at the heart of our future is made of. It's for the period 23-28. It's a global budget impact of $2.6 billion. We have 45 new action, and we are also working on the 30 action that were initiated before with the previous action plan. We've got 5 financial tools that are mainly subsidizing project, And as I said earlier, we work in coordination and in a more sort of a integrated management with 25 other ministry, so education, environment, energy, innovation, culture, family minister, health. So we work with mainly all the ministers that are within the government of Quebec. Thanks for your attention. If you have any question on what Société Plan Nord is doing, we have a lot of document on the website quebec.ca. So make sure that you can consult all the papers and see in more details what kind of action we are doing. Thanks again for your attention.
Thank you, Patrick, very much for this presentation and for really highlighting how very well-structured governance and a lot of consultation can move forward a plan such as yours. I would like to move us to our panel discussion. We have 4 panelists, and from Ontario online, from North Rhine-Westphalia here, from Sachave in Slovenia here, and Limburg. So let's start, please, with Amanda Wouters, who is the director of regional Regional Economic Development Branch at the Ontario Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. Amanda, you have 5 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, and good morning from Toronto. I'm honored to join today's panel to share insights from Ontario. So just to set the stage for everyone, Ontario is Canada's most populous province. We're home to over 16 million people, more than 40% of the national population. So geographically, we're pretty vast. We are roughly the size of France and Spain put together. So this scale brings opportunity and complexity to industrial transition in the province. Our strategies obviously need to reflect the diversity of the province and also build on long-standing strengths in manufacturing and our resource base, but also respond to the unique needs and challenges facing, urban centers like here in Toronto, cities across the province with vibrant universities, our manufacturing communities across southwestern Ontario, and our many Indigenous communities as well. So Ontario's approach to industrial policy has really been a sectoral-led approach. So we focus on key priority sectors, automotive, advanced manufacturing, life sciences, technology, mining and critical minerals, forestry, and agri-food. So those are kind of our top priorities. From a policy development approach, industrial transition conversations in Ontario have been rooted in conversations and partnerships with both industry and local actors. So it's a point of principle to engage, very broadly, municipalities, economic development organizations, incubators, accelerators, academia, and research institutions. So it's a very broad engagement. We engage extensively through, depending on the sector or the strategy pursued, there's sector councils, roundtables, regional consultations to ensure our approaches are fundamentally practical, responsive, and collaborative. So over the past several years, I guess since 2019 or so, Ontario has leveraged this model to develop a series of sector strategies that guide investments in our province, from research, innovation, through collaboration or commercialization, scaling, and anchor investments into the province. So on sector strategies, we have Driving Prosperity, which is our automotive strategy. It is looking to position Ontario as a hub for electric and connected autonomous vehicle production. So it focuses really on building an end-to-end battery supply chain here in Ontario, leveraging critical minerals in Ontario's north, and repositioning our existing vehicle and parts production sector for the car of the future. So central to this, on a partnership front, we have Ontario's Vehicle Innovation Network, which is a key role in delivering on the strategy and supporting partnerships across Ontario. So the network is tasked with leading development and adoption of advanced automotive technologies and smart mobility solutions. and electric and low carbon vehicle technology. So they're the front lines on that. And they also have a network of 7 regional technology development sites across Ontario to connect local players on automotive and technology clusters. So really being the bridge between our great technology strengths in the province and our existing automotive base and advanced manufacturing strengths. We also have our life science strategy, taking life sciences to the next level, which is aiming to grow Ontario's life science sector by 85,000 high-value jobs by 2030. So the strategy there focuses on commercialization, investment and traction, particularly in biomanufacturing and accelerating the adoption of Ontario-made health innovations into our hospital networks. And it also leverages really interesting and unique opportunities here in Ontario, including Ontario's nuclear fleet. So we have 3 nuclear generating stations in the province and a nuclear research reactor at McMaster University in Hamilton to support medical isotopes production. So this is a really unique play for Ontario. And there's a goal that we've recently established to double productions in medical isotopes by 2030. So it's a bit of a focus for us at the moment. And then there's Ontario's critical mineral strategy. So this isn't led by my ministry, but our partner ministry of Mines and Energy. And it's supporting the development of secure and domestic supply chain for minerals and for emerging technologies like EV batteries again. So it's like the back to the batteries. But there's a real focus on attracting investment, promoting Indigenous participation in mining, and creating high quality employment opportunities within the sector. So the key kind of signature play here is around the Ring of Fire in Ontario. So it's an area in Northern Ontario, about 5,000 square kilometers. It's very remote, but has vast resources in chromite, copper, and nickel. So partnerships here with Indigenous communities are central to advancing those economic goals, including developing an all-seasons road to the remote area. It's a very complex project and a top priority for Ontario to unlock the Ring of Fire opportunity. Given that we are a federal, we have the federal government and the provincial government and shared responsibilities in economic development. We also work very closely with the federal government in delivering Ontario's sector strategies and share where we have common priorities. So we commonly hold, pipeline calls with our federal colleagues and share intelligence. There's a lot of co-investment that goes on as well, where we are jointly funding strategic projects to amplify impact. We partner with. Oh, sorry.
Can you back up a little bit?
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry. Okay. All right. So yeah, so we partner with municipalities. We have 17 regional innovation centers, regional economic development funds focused on, the Southwest, the East, to the North. And we have a new trade program too, which is also focusing on catalyzing partnerships. But I'll leave it at that. We're just, happy to be here and to share experiences, be part of this broader conversation. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for really highlighting the different strategies that you have that support industrial transition in Ontario and how the province has been really working to foster collaboration across sectors and across actors. I'd like now to continue and ask Catherine Bischoff, who is the Regional Manager for Innovation Markets at the Ministry of of the state of North Rhine-Westphalia. And Catherine, if you could share with us a little bit your experience in developing the different partnerships that you have and how you build alignment around shared goals and priorities and some of the main challenges in ensuring collaboration.
Sounds very good. Thank you so much. So as mentioned, I work for the Ministry of Economic Affairs of the state of North Rhine-Westphalia. Because Amanda did such an elaborate introduction on Ontario, maybe I say a few words to North Rhine-Westphalia as well as a start. So we're in population the largest German state of the 16 states. We have over 18 million inhabitants. We're located in the west, so almost 1/4 of all German people live there, and our marketing campaign is Europe's heartbeat. So it's an area where we do have a lot of large companies, but we also have a lot of small and medium-sized companies, the German Mittelstand, but also a lot of startups, a lot of hidden champions, and we are coming from a coal and steel traditional industrial state, and we moved more over time. We're still an industrial state, but we also changed related to Tamara's framework, our sectors towards other sectors. We have a strong chemical sector, machinery sector, electronic sector, automotive sector, and so on. This just as an introduction to set the frame, but I wanted to talk about the partnerships. So as I'm responsible for North America, one way on how we foster partnerships is through the establishment of MOUs with different regions. And we do have a partnership with Minnesota. That's why we have all the colleagues here today. But we do also have other partnerships, such as Pennsylvania or British Columbia, as they were in the audience. And these partnerships are either initiated by our state chancellery for the whole state, or they're initiated by different ministries. And in Minnesota, it's by our Ministry of Economics and also by the Ministry of the Environment. So we do collaborate also with the different ministries. And yeah, earlier Tamara spoke of the glue. I also would say that the government, like we're trying to set it as a frame, this type of partnership with the different ministries. In Minnesota, it's focused on climate action. So that's also, I think Christina mentioned it, a focus area which we set in our MOU. It was prolonged in August 2024. For another round of partnership. Our minister traveled to Minnesota and we signed the agreement to prolong that. So I think this MOU gives us an official frame to kind of manage this partnership. And then the question is also in terms of level of engagement. So I saw the cross-sectoral collaboration also in terms of multi-stakeholder collaboration. And that's actually for me quite passionate because that was my former PhD topic. So I also wrote my PhD on stakeholder collaboration for sustainable. There it was entrepreneurial engagement, but I do believe that stakeholder collaboration and getting all the stakeholders engaged is very, very important. And we try to do that with the Minnesota NRW partnership with the different institutions. And that's why we're so many today. So I represent the ministry, but we also have Tobias who represents the community. So we don't only have the state partnership, but we also have the community partnership. He's the mayor of one of our partner communities in Saarbeck. So that's one of the levels. But then we also have the level in terms of the research facilities and the universities. So Christoph is here and Sabina are here from the universities and universities of applied sciences. So that's another second stakeholder group. And then we also have the stakeholder group of the economic development agencies or the chambers of commerce, where Elka and Mirai are therefore here. So they also partner with the regions in Minnesota. And one more stakeholder group would, of course, be the business partnerships. So this just as a multi-stakeholder perspective. So I think that's super important. And then the question was also what the role of government is doing in terms of like the strategies and the partners. I think it goes hand in hand, what the government is doing together with what the partners are doing. I wouldn't say one creates the strategy, the other implements the strategy. I think it's super important to work together. And I think what the government does, for us, it's less policy building. It's more like setting the frame or the glue. And I think it's also an important role is showing the visibility, what the government does. So if we have our minister somewhere, it always creates a lot of press. It creates a lot of appreciation. It just helps also, I think, the partners in getting support and getting the initiatives done. And I think what we can also do as the government, also what Christoph mentioned about the funding, so we do have funds, we can also give support. We can enable like certain partnerships or initiatives that they get implemented. We can also do visits, like delegation trips from one place to the other. I think that's very important as well. And we can try to coordinate the goals of the different partners and the activities and try to get an overview and connect the different stakeholders. And in our area, in terms of the transition management and the framework, we mostly focus on the climate solution part because that's just what we're kind of as a pillar focused on in terms of the transition management. So I think in terms of the lessons learned, I think it's important to like engage with each other, look at the different perspectives, adapt and renew and just learn from each other. And then maybe a last point for a minute on the challenges. And then I'm done. I think we have three main challenges that I was also had as questions for the group. I think the first challenge, I mean, you can also see it today. for us, like just from my ministry perspective, I would like to have more companies involved in the partnership. And I think we're missing that company level a little bit still. We do have it indirectly, but I would like to deepen that somehow. And that's also a question, how do you get companies involved? Because also I'm from the Ministry of Economic Affairs, so that's super important for us. That's question number one. And the second question point is the broad versus deep point. So sometimes with the MOUs, I'm not sure, first of all, how many regions do we focus on? I mentioned now we have a couple of MOUs, like do we just have very few and go very deep in terms of the number and also in terms of the topic? Like we have climate action now, is that too broad? Is that too narrow? Like I find this broad versus deep focus very difficult. And then the third and the last point in terms of the challenges, it's what you mentioned, Tamara, with the long-term planning and stability, predictability, being proactive. And I think that's really hard for us as a government. We have the federal state elections and the national elections. They are either every 5 or every 4 years, depending on the level. So the planning is always within that time frame. So if you have projects, if you have initiatives, it's not like when I used to work, for instance, with Singapore, they make a 30-year plan on how to change the mobility system. And it's, for us, I think it's at times too reactive. And I think, just to bring the bridge, I think NRW is also a state, I think we're very strong, but we also do face some challenges. Like we do have like some areas where I think we still have a strong competitive advantage. But if I'm really honestly speaking, we do have challenges with the companies because they do have high energy costs. We have lack of skilled labor. Some other states are maybe faster in terms of digitalization, innovation. And we do have these advantages, but I'm also concerned that we make sure that we keep these advantages and that we somehow have a proactive transitional approach, which thinks very long term. So my question is also how you put this long-term strategic proactive government perspective in there. And that's it.
Catherine, thank you very much. And for bringing out those questions to the group, because I think they're really, really important. And hopefully there's things that everyone has to share about it. Also for highlighting this need for stability and how hands-on you are in promoting collaboration among your stakeholders. So thank you very much. I would like to turn to Maya from the Sasave Regional Development Agency. And Maya, if you might be able to tell us a little bit more about the strategy design behind your Just Transition program and how you built on your existing assets and identified your goals and priorities, that would be great.
Thank you for your question. First, I must put everything in the historical context. The first round of transition started in the South with the state referendum about the new block of thermal power plant Trebolia in 1999. And the voters in Slovenia, it was the national referendum, were against this, and that led to the state-based decision that the coal mines should be closed. So in 2000, the main law was designed and the transition started. But the problem was that this law focused mainly on the social compensation and the site rehabilitation. And the key principles of just transition, such as replacing lost jobs, stimulating new economic activities, and involving local stakeholders, were not applied. And the transition wasn't successful. I must add that 5,000 working places were lost. The region in that time, when the closure of the mine started, had 40,000 people living there. So the 5,000 working places were lost, so that transition wasn't successful. So the turning point came in 2022 with the adoption of national strategy for coal phase out, and later the territorial just transition plans for the Sauye. And it was the whole design of TJTP was informed by extensive stakeholder consultation led by Deloitte under the EU Technical Support Instrument. More than 100 project ideas were collected through a bottom-up process, including municipalities, SMEs, educational institutions, NGOs, and youth organizations. And this wide input identified 4 integrated priority pillars. First was diversifying the regional economy through entrepreneurship and SMEs development. Second, investment in clean technologies and R&D, particularly hydrogen and carbon-free innovation. The third pillar is skill development and education transformation through the regional learning hub Preplet. And the fourth, revitalization of degraded and industrial sites into innovation, cultural, and educational infrastructure. Those pillars built on the side's existing assets, strong industrial know-how, and emerging research capacity through the National Institute of Chemistry with this new established Center for Carbon-Free Technologies, and then settlement pattern suitable for sustainable mobility and valuable industrial heritage. To ensure integrated strategic design and alignment across levels, governance was absolutely critical. I must say that Slovenia does not have the formal regional government. We only have the state level and the municipalities, which means coordination cannot rely on administrative authority. Instead, we created a multi-level co-governance model. At national level, ministries define strategic direction and regulatory frameworks. At the regional level, the regional development agencies, ASAIA, acts as coordinator and integrator, and at local level, municipalities shape special priorities and provide political anchoring. And within RDA's ASAIA, we established the Center for Just Transition, which functioned as an operational support structure, providing technical assistance to beneficiaries, monitoring implementation, and facilitating cooperation among stakeholders. This governance arrangement allows us to align EU incentives, national policy requirements, and local needs. And it also prevents fragmentation of investment, a common challenge in transition regions. Just to summarize, bottom-up participation ensured relevance, top-down alignment ensured compliance, and regional coordination ensured integration. Today, the transition in Zasavia, the second phase, is no longer designed for the region, but with the region. And that, in our view, is the most important success factor in defining new growth paths in attracting future-oriented industries. Thank you.
Maya, thank you very much, and for really sharing with us what your experience is and how you've also established a particular group, the center, to help move this transition forward. I'd like to stay on the topic of, or the perspective of regional development agencies and turn to Sarah Smits, who's the Business Liaison Manager for Europe and US in Limburg. Sarah. Just to frame this a little bit, if you could tell us a little bit more about how you fostered and ensured vertical strategic alignment, and how your process unfolded, that would be great.
I'm very happy to explain how we built SALC Turbo and how we made sure that our regional plan was fully aligned vertically with both European and local priorities. But let me start with first a bit of a background about Limburg. Our province went through several heavy economic shocks. We used to rely on 3 big industrial employers, which were the mines, which was Philips, and which was Ford. And together they had more than 60,000 employees. So when they closed or disappeared, we lost more than employment. We also lost a part of our economic structure and our social fabric. And we saw that former mining municipalities faced deep challenges. School dropout rates were much higher, and the participation in higher education remained low. So that history really shapes our starting point. We needed a new future-oriented model for our economy, one that would respond to local needs, but also linked to the broader European agenda for innovation, sustainability, and digitization. And that became the foundation of Salk Turbo. Now, our Provincial Development Agency plays a central role in this strategic plan. Our task is to implement the province's economic policy and to turn strategy into action. When we started Salk Turbo, we looked carefully at Limburg, at the context of Limburg, bottom up, and then connected that to the opportunities of European structural funds. So the idea was to use those funds not as subsidies, but as leverage. Because to create the biggest possible return on investments, we don't just hand out the money to the partners. We really want to make sure that we get the biggest ROE, return on investments. So we made clear choices, no more free money, as to say, but strategic money invested where it could truly transform our economy. We launched Salk Turbo right before COVID hit. And interestingly, the pandemic only made our priorities even more relevant because suddenly digitalization, innovation, and resilience became urgent for every business and every sector. So for Salk Turbo, we focused on 4 clear priorities. We want a competitive Limburg, we want a digital Limburg, a sustainable Limburg, and an inclusive Limburg. And these 4 pillars define together how we want to strengthen our region economically, socially, and ecologically, and they form the backbone of the entire strategy. And to make sure that the plan stayed aligned at all levels, we designed an inclusive and evidence-based process. So we set up thematic working groups around these major topics. Each table brought together experts from across Limburg, local authorities, research institutions, businesses, and social partners. And our local university, especially the economics department, played a key role in grounding our choices scientifically and helping us develop our monitoring system. So then we moved from vision to concrete projects. We worked with what we call project inspirators. These are people and organizations who help to generate ideas and connect partners. For example, the university might propose an idea, and then companies or municipalities could join forces and also get behind these projects to really act it out. This approach created a long list of project ideas, which we then refined together into a short list of projects. At that point, we had a core steering group composed of the Provincial Development Agency, the provincial representatives, and the university, who reviewed each proposal. They checked for feasibility, alignment with our ambitions, and potential impacts. And then, once that first screening was done, the projects went to the task force of Salk Turbo for final approval. Now, the task force is really at the heart of our governance. It brings together all key stakeholders in Limburg. It's the Limburg's ministers, the provincial deputies, it's the unions, university, and other important partners within our region. And all together, they decide on which projects are feasible and which are aligned with the Salk Turbo priorities. So this ensures both political legitimacy and societal ownership. It also allows every member to spread project calls within their own network, helping to match ideas with the right partners. And this is where the vertical alignment really happens. We respond to local challenges, we connect them to regional and national priorities, and we anchor them in European frameworks. But at the same time, the task force gives Limburg a single united voice, which has strengthened our position at both the Flemish and European levels. So another key element is how we monitor and measure results. Salk Turbo is the first recovery program in which we as a region are fully in the driver's seat. We don't just look at the success of individual projects, we look at the overall effect of our regional economy. So instead of asking how many jobs did this one project create, we ask broader questions like how did we improve the region's digitalization, how much more sustainable and productive has our economy become? And we still track employment, of course, but our perspective is wider. We measure resilience and transformation. We've defined key performance indicators within our 4 main priorities, and these KPIs aren't tied to single projects. They help us see the bigger picture, the system change. To give you some examples of some projects that came out of Salk Turbo, I think the most big one, and also it's the one that I'm actually involved in, is the health campus in our region, which is the cluster of the life science ecosystem, and also making sure that all companies in life sciences are all put together in one place. So now we are designing a new building where all companies can come together, but we also bring together stakeholders like the university, but also government, companies, hospitals, and other organizations in life sciences to make sure that these ecosystems can actually grow and bring something more to the table. So that's just one of the projects that came out. I can give other projects if you'd like, but this is where we stand with Salk Turbo. And I think one of the biggest things that came out of it is that the Salk Turbo workforce still comes together after 5 years, which gives an example of how important this engagement is from all players within our region. Thank you.
Sabine, Sarah, thank you very much. I think a couple of things that really come out here. You've managed to do something that a lot of places don't or haven't, which is take measuring performance based on what the objectives of the region are, and then see, how measuring that and seeing how that has been advanced, even though you're using EU funds, because often those seem to be very separate processes, but this is sort of a nice linking of them. And I think you've given a very good example of a proactive approach to the strategic planning. So I think that brings part of Tamara's typology to life. So thank you very much. I would like to, we do have a coffee break, but I'm going to eat into it a little bit and ask if there are any questions or if anyone has anything they'd like to share or any points of discussion. Yes, Daniela.
Yes, thank you for all the presentations where all of them have something that make me reflecting on something that we have also in our region. But still, I have a question for Catherine, if possible, because I think that you touched upon something that we are really trying to work on also in our region, and that is also considering the difference that are among our 2 regions, that is putting together all different stakeholders and trying to work with them on strategic vision, on strategic planning, but also on having some feedbacks from partners. And we have as well in Emilia-Romagna something very similar that is called Patto per il lavoro e per il clima. It's a pact for climate and employment. Maybe Paolo will tell something more afterwards. But what is lacking, in my view, is some operational feedbacks. How do you have some tools? Do you have some instruments to, to pass from the strategic view, the strategic collaboration, then to more operational ideas or projects and something that is, that you can then use on the ground? That is my question.
It's really funny that you're mentioning this because when we were just writing a report for our minister on our Minnesota partnership, she asked, so what are the concrete results? And so the group started gathering like concrete outcomes, concrete results. And then sometimes you see how many results there are and they're not measured exactly. Like I was also, when I listened to what you were saying with the key KPIs, we don't have that enough yet. And it's also, I think, a takeaway for us. And I think a lot of the work that we're doing is very hard to measure because our job in terms of economic collaboration and development, a lot of it is not tangible. We have a lot of diplomatic relationships that we're doing, and we have a lot of, let's say, delegation visits, meetings, appointments, and then the follow-up is always like, oh, they're interested in this industry. We should connect them with this partner, and they should follow up with this project. And so we do initiate a lot, but it's very, very hard to measure so far. We don't have the obligation to measure usually. It's rarely ever asked. But I would definitely say we do need more concrete. I do think we have the goals and I do think we have the planning, but I do think in order to also legitimate our actions, I think it's very, very important that we try to operationalize that in the concrete outcomes, because it gives us validation to continue what we're doing. So no, I don't yet, but I wish we would. You probably have that more from the university side, in terms of measures.
Perhaps I can add something to that. From our university, for example, if we do a presentation and an audit, there's always the contact to the ministries. The ministries are open to the work we are doing. So, for example, while we are speaking, the minister is working together with my colleague, and we are speaking about the heating concepts, sustainable heating concept. So she's coming to Münster, she's there, and she works with us. So or last year, or 4 weeks ago, we've been together with the Minister of Environment and Transportation. We've been together in Minnesota for 1 week. Or the year before, we spent 1 week together in Minnesota with the Ministry of Economic. And so this work is very close, is very hands-on, and the ministry is always, or the ministries are always on our side. So that makes it very easy. Thank you.
Thank you. What I'd like to do is invite us to take a very short break, about 5 or 10 minutes. Also, for our colleagues online, we're going to set up the room for the next roundtable. And I also would like to thank you for this discussion, because that's also really what we're here for. So hopefully we'll have more of that. Thank you. There's a coffee, there's a few croissants, and we'll see you in 10 minutes. So at 16:35.
For the online participants, we are about to start.
Okay, we're going to get started again. I hope everyone's back. There are a couple of people left to join us, but they will be back shortly. And I think we'll move into our next roundtable session, which is on policy experimentation for evidence-based industrial transition. What we'd like to do in this session, one of the things that we found in the industrial transition work is the importance of being able to experiment. Not to necessarily do something right off the bat everywhere, but to test and pilot. Because policy experimentation does just that. You can test an idea, learn from it, and then adapt it and scale it up or out. And it can be really effective to help regional transition, particularly because transition really involves exploring new ways of working and new ideas. Now, what I found really interesting was when Wing asked various regions about their interest in presenting and sharing experience with experimentation, there was a lot of interest among the North American regions on the topic and a little bit of reticence among the European regions. So it may have something to do with a more risk-averse culture. I don't know. We're going to start with an OECD presentation by our colleague Alexis Duran, who is sitting right here, on our approach here and on concepts with respect to policy experimentation. And then we'll follow with practical examples from Stuttgart and then a panel discussion and an open floor. So I'm going to turn this over to Alex for a brief presentation of about 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am here to set the scene by sharing a few of the foundations of policy experimentation from the OECD. There's one message that I'd like us all to take away from my remarks today. It's that we can all in this room and online take advantage of policy experimentation to try new things, even under our current conditions with the resources that we have, with the data that we have available, etc. But the policy experiments that teach us the most are those that have a few foundations in place. These are the ABCDs that I will share with you shortly. But first, what do we mean when we talk about policy experimentation? Verinia just told us what we're talking about is an adaptive learning process, testing new policies, new governance arrangements, otherwise new approaches on a very defined and limited scale. For example, they might apply to a particular geographic region. An experiment might involve a particular subgroup, even a representative population. Might be within a very limited timeline. We then monitor the effects of these experiments, we evaluate them, and we consider what learnings to extract from the experiment and whether to scale them up. These experiments run the gambit, everything from scientific randomized control trials with very tight controls to attempt to establish causality, to the other end of the spectrum, which is more of what we're talking about today. These are real-world pilots, experimentation that is happening in the real-world context, but on a limited and defined scale. So why experiment in the context of industrial transition? This is something that Tamara's paper has established very well. But in short, what we're seeing through our discussions previously and with you all is that for regions in industrial transition, where traditional policy approaches, traditional or long adopted governance arrangements, they're not always giving us the results that we wish to see. So in this context, experimentation can help us try out new approaches, including under uncertainty and while limiting risks. So we're rolling out something on a limited and tightly monitored basis. Ultimately, experimentation can help us build evidence on what works and what doesn't work to make better policy and better governance for industrial transition. How do you build a pilot? Can we switch to the next slide? It's not working for me. The answer is the ABCDs. It's as simple as that. So let's start with the A, articulate the scope. A good policy pilot defines clear goals, timeline, and governance up front. You can still leave room for flexibility by scheduling in points of reflection, points of adjustment. We'll talk about this a little bit more in the C, but a good experiment starts with a purpose and a methodology. You can keep clicking through, Lisa. To B, bring stakeholders into the process. So unlike in a white coat lab experiment, when we're talking about policy experiments, participants aren't just passive subjects. They can actively participate in the design, the execution, and then the evaluation of the experiment. This brings us to C, create iterative learning cycles. The hallmark of the experimental approach is its ability to let us learn through action, trying things out, and then reflection. So importantly, your policy experiment should reach a point of reflection, a point where an evaluation is conducted, what we call the scale, shape, or sunset stage. This might be at the end of an experiment. It might be partway between two phases of an experiment. But this is the point where decision makers assess whether the experiment should be broadened or scaled, shaped or adjusted, or sunset. It's not giving us the results we want. We are going to retire this experiment based on the evidence. Here I'd like to give a very quick example from Sweden, not directly related to industrial transition, but it's the best example that we found of this kind of phased approach. They took a phased experimental approach to regionalization in the late 90s, early 2000s. They started with a few pilot regions. They gave them some new competences, and they allowed these pilot regions to choose their governance models. It then had, a little while later, a scale, shape, sunset moment. It evaluated, it looked at the results, and it decided to, across the board, introduce regional development councils, these particular inter-municipal cooperation bodies. A couple of years later, it had another shape moment where it looked at the results of both of the previous phases and produced some recommendations for how the regional governance should be shaped. So this is just an example of how evaluation and feedback loops can enrich a policy project. This brings us to D, which is the hardest, perhaps the most important, dare to fall short within protected spaces. The thing about experiments is that they may be flops. This is just inherent in the concept of experimentation, and it's really something that we should be celebrating. But of course, a flop is a hard thing to sell for professional and political reasons. This is why the fourth pillar is to try to create safe places where experimenters can accept and learn from failures. We don't have time to get into all of the different ways that this can be done, but I'd just like to provide the example of France here, which I think is very useful. France has enshrined in its constitution the right for local authorities to experiment, but under very well-defined conditions, durations, with the specific evidence and reporting requirements in place, which gives security both to the experimenters, the local government, because they know what is possible, what they are entitled to do, and also to the central government. So this is the end of the ABCDs. Just end on that very last point that, again, we can all use these ABCDs, I hope, to enact experiments in the context of industrial transition. I'll be really interested to hear how Stuttgart and the rest of you are experimenting in your own contexts. Thank you.
Alex, thank you very much for that very synthetic overview of elements that go into experimentation. Just so everyone knows, we will make the presentations available to you, so you'll get them at the end tomorrow or the next day. I'd like now to turn to Simone Jung, who's the coordinator for European Affairs and Partnerships in Stuttgart, for your presentation on your policy approach to industrial transition for the Stuttgart region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for offering this opportunity to present some insights into our processes in industrial transition. I'd first like to give some introduction. Yeah, on Stuttgart region, as most of you might know, industry is crucial at the moment. In Stuttgart region, we mainly depend on the automotive industry and mechanical engineering, but these are areas that are undergoing deep changes, and many of the big companies are cutting jobs at the moment. This is not only a problem for the employees, but it is also a problem for the regional economy, because it leads to a potential risk for public budgets, reduced local tax revenues, and thus the reduced budget for public services as well. Our region is undergoing changes in the request for sites, because we need new sites for new technologies, but we don't have them, as well as for transports and logistics, and we need new qualified workforce for new emerging areas of work. At the same time, we see that there's a reduced public acceptance for additional development. You all know this not in my backyard principle. And we face lots of discussions with citizens when we try to start development of new areas for development. These structural changes in industry and in the regional economy have effects on the energy demand and energy supply, on the housing sector, on transport and communication, as well as on open space development and agriculture and biodiversity. And the question is, what can be done at the regional level, and how can it be integrated into a holistic strategy? Our objectives are to safeguard Stuttgart region's prosperity as far as possible, to maintain the innovation capacity in close cooperation with universities, and to manage this transformation. As we've learned at the beginning of this session, what I found quite interesting, we are in this typology of tomorrow. We're a region of phasing out, but with economic diversification. So we try to diversify our regional economy, but it's not as easy as that, because there's a strong national and international competition for all these new technologies, such as biotechnology, creativity, and nowadays also the defense sector. And that's why we mainly focus on the competences that we as a regional institution have together with our local institutions, which are land use planning and zoning, the development of the infrastructure, mainly public transport, train infrastructure, local public amenities in close cooperation with the local authorities, open space development, and economic development and economic promotion. And one typical thing for Stuttgart region is that we have many global players, but also very small municipalities that we have to take into consideration. And at regional level, we feel able to provide input, coordination, assistance, lobbying, and in special areas also funding. Just one more click. These are some of the areas of activity where we try to test and to steer industrial transition and experiment, and kind of the adjusting screws, but everything is within a holistic approach. So first field is sites for economic activities. We are engaged in planning. We support land use planning and zoning. We support brownfield development, and we try to give financial support for development. All this in close cooperation with our economic promotion cooperation and in a close dialogue with the companies as well as with the chambers. Second field is an adequate infrastructure that we try to give to companies. This includes a comprehensive planning for roads and tracks, an extension of infrastructure. For example, we've created mobility hubs. This is kind of an experimental way of enabling people to switch from one mobility type to another one. We are in improving fiber and broadband connections as well, which is quite important for future technologies. Another important point is the energy supply. We are at the moment dedicating sites for wind turbines and for open space PV. We support PV in the build-up areas, and we try to offer sites for energy infrastructure as far as possible and available. Okay, so I'll go quickly through this and get to an example. So ecological development is clear. We are very engaged in adaptation to climate challenge and in close cooperation with our local authorities. Our economic development cooperation is working in re and upskilling of workforce. And workforce needs affordable and sustainable housing. And here's the circle is closed again because it gets back to zoning and land use planning. And the last field of activity is good policy exchange, especially with the European partners and our Northern Virginia American partners. And these are four areas of strategic policy support, which we identified being the most important one at regional level. I'll just go quick through this because I want to show you a concrete example as I was asked for. This is a project called Driving into the Future that we launched because of our focus in the automotive sector. We had a deep exchange with other European regions that are engaged in the automotive sector. These were Styria in Austria, the metropolitan city of Turin, the Barcelona region, the Alsace region, and the University of Ostrava in the Czech Republic. And for the methodology, this is how we proceeded and tried to get the fact first, but not only from a desktop research, but also from expert interviews, because in the interviews you get more insight into unwritten rules. You learn more about soft factors than you can find in documents or published studies. We established an abstract on facts and figures and had workshops with external moderation to exchange on different strategies of these regions, and then defined benchmarks and calibrated our own position to know where we were standing, where our strengths and our weaknesses are. Then we informed our elected officials and draw our conclusions. And at the moment, we are going to take action. We are going to integrate the results of this project into the further development of our regional plan. And for the future, we'd like to get to Lübeck and further exchange with these European regions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sabine, and also for really highlighting a very proactive learning-based approach. I think there's a lot to gain from that and to learn from that, and working with what you have. I'd like to now open up the more panel discussion of this session and really begin with actually all of our panelists are online. I think it is that testament to less experimentation in Europe. And ask Dale Medeiros, who is the Senior Regional Partner in Northern Virginia of the Northern Virginia Regional Commission, to join us. And really, Dale, if you could, in 5 minutes, tell us more about your evidence-based approach in your initiative in working with Stuttgart and the sort of experimental way of learning and adopting new initiatives that you have been practicing, that would be really great. Dale.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's just a real privilege to be part of this process. And I just wanted to say special thanks also to Simona Jung and Thomas Kiewit and everybody from the Bund for working with us for so many years. Um, I want to start first with I've got 4 minutes, 45 seconds. I know in the second I cross that, please stop me. But I was asked also to address sort of the barriers and the ways in which a data-driven approach to our collaboration have sort of steered this partnership for over 25 years and make it what I think is going to become a model for the way local governments engage internationally, hopefully across the United States. First, in general, the work that or the barriers that we faced 25, 26 years ago were typical of what local governments face internationally, which is international work in general at the local level is stigmatized in the United States. It's not connected to the day jobs of a city manager, a school superintendent. I'm speaking generally. And there's not as many purposeful strategic plans and processes for prioritizing ways in which local government actually undertakes any kinds of activities. Sort of stuck in this model of sister cities, of events and ceremonies, and as a consequence of everything, everywhere, all at once. I would say for every one article that's positive about international work, my experience within Northern Virginia and other capacities in which I've worked at this level, there's 99 stories of frivolous travel, waste. And I think the real struggle but also the opportunity for us is to help local governments develop global engagement plans and strategies that are problem-focused, goal-oriented, and data-driven that lead to outcomes that transform Main Street, but also support, again, the overwhelming list of domestic or local priorities that an elected official, a city manager, a fire chief, or the head of social programs for a local government has. And so the ways in which for the past 26 years we've been overcoming this and refining our methodology, it's not perfect, it's a work in progress, but I think it's served us really, really well, is that we focused on, okay, back in the 26 years ago when we were looking to Stuttgart, they were global pioneers in stormwater management, integrated land use planning, transportation planning. And our priorities at the time were things like non-point source runoff, urban heat islands, climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, integrating transportation and land use planning. And Germany, in general, Stuttgart in particular, were leaders also in areas like applications of solar, renewable energy, emissions of greenhouse gases, volumes of materials that were recycled as a result of ambitious extended producer responsibility legislation. So we use quantitative benchmarks to justify why we're working with Stuttgart, right? It's the first place you have to start. There's lots of cities, lots of local governments, lots of themes around the world, also in local governments. If you start with, are there innovations from which we can learn and apply that have an outcome, again, to our top demands of our local officials and their staff? And that's progressed over the years. We continuously look and compare at our performance with those of our counterparts across the pond. And that's the first filter of prioritization that we use. And over the years, it's worked really, really, really well. The second filter that we've used, and I put the report in to the chat box, is we work with Germany because it's the second largest investor in our region. And so to the best of my knowledge, it's only the second time in the entire United States this level of investment and the level of granularity has been parked into our 5 largest local governments as boundaries. So we're not talking the greater Washington area. We're not talking about the state of Virginia. We're talking about Arlington County and the city of Alexandria. We map this to foreign investment. So the union of those two filters allows us to stay closely aligned with the work in regions like Stuttgart, other parts of Germany as well, but particularly Stuttgart. and in a sense allow us to behave sort of like parents by saying no to other distractions because we want this international work to serve a purpose. Not international work at the local level is so important on climate, economic development, on mental health, education. It's vital. And so as a consequence of the FDI report, we also identified that, it's not just Germany that's investing in us, but German firms like VW, Reho offer us workforce training opportunities. The apprenticeship system in Germany is really, really successful. This has been tested over time in multiple states. We want to be part of this process that says, okay, how can we apply the dual system of apprenticeships through the portals of our German-based companies like Rheinmetall, like VW, like Reho, or Swiss-based like Nestle, to support our career technical education programs, but now in particular, the development of a workforce that's capable of maintaining and operating our data centers. So I'll just close by saying couple of factoids about Northern Virginia. We're the largest concentration of data centers in the world. As AI kicks in, the demand for energy is going to grow exponentially. At the same time, we're losing a lot of federal jobs. Loss of federal jobs translates into loss of federal contractors. So we are in an economic transition period as we speak. On the other hand, we have data centers. They're valuable to our local economies. $1 billion alone for Loudoun County, $100 million for Prince William County. And this reliance is only going to grow in this particular time period. But then servicing the energy demands over the next 5, 10, 15 years is going to present some really interesting challenges, but maybe opportunities through collaboration like this. So we seek policy and technical innovations like district energy heat conveyance systems from the data center operations of our operators like Equinix or AWS, which are active in Europe. What can we learn from their operations there and apply them here? Same with workforce training. I'll close by saying that I think the central question of our work, of this body, is not justifying that we need to work together. It's how, again, local governments work. It's how they prioritize, how they define success, how they allocate staff and budgets to justify the work. Because the old model of just everything everywhere all at once, events and ceremonies, is not going to make it. We're in a really important transition phase, I think, nationally, certainly regionally in Northern Virginia. And it's for like this that are going to really, really help us. And I just wanted to close by saying thank you again for giving us the privilege of being part of this conversation. And we really look forward to the rest of the program today and the next couple of years.
Great. Thanks, Dale, very much. And really highlighting this notion of, what innovations can you learn from, but then how do you translate that to your political level to bring them on board and be able to move forward, and how much we all have to learn from each other. I would like to now turn to Benjamin Lefebvre, who is the Innovation Zones Advisor at the Ministry of Economy, Innovation and Energy in Quebec. And Benjamin, if you could share with us a little bit what are the challenges that the Quebec government was aiming to address by establishing innovation zones, and how the proposed solutions kind of build these foundations. And you have about 5 minutes, so I will probably show up on the screen when you're getting close to it.
Perfect. I'll try to go fast. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Before answering the question, I would like to give a very short definition of what we call innovation zone. It's about the same as innovation district. There's a lot of innovation district in the world right now. It's a place-based economic development initiatives, limited territorial boundaries. It's a sector-driven for us, and it's an innovation-oriented for sure. So the initiative was launched by the government to tackle 3 main challenges: bringing ideas to market, so meaning facilitating the commercialization of innovation. That was a big issue in Quebec. We finance a lot of research, but not a lot of innovation comes through that. Attract private investment in R&D, but also in future industrial investment, and foster clean, sustainable growth, and position Quebec in the new economy of the future. So as a solution, there's 2 ways I want to describe. The first is selection, how we select the innovation zone, and the other is how we support the first steps of the implementation. So there was a call for project was launched in 2019, so 6 years ago. So the government asked all the different regions, different projects to submit to the ministry proposition for an innovation zone. So in addition to the criteria that I just mentioned, there were three other ones that really established the general expectations towards the zone. The project also had to arise from a concerted effort of many stakeholders, so encourage really bottom-up initiative. The project had to have international ambition. We want the zone to work on solving big problems for the industry, and we wanted project to promote attractive physical environment. So we want the zone to play a defining role in creating new kinds of sustainable and attractive living environment. In total, we received 35 applications, and we have now 4 innovation zones in Quebec. So there's some disappointment, as you can imagine. But we think that we selected the zone that had the most impact and potential. Interesting fact, though, innovation zone or innovation districts are mostly urban projects. Here in Quebec, they are mostly situated in mid-size and low-density area. That brings some challenges for us in the future on how to properly develop the different aspects of an innovation zone. I'll say there's a few initiatives that were put in place to make sure that the zone flourish and generate concrete results. So our first steps in the intervention of the zone, we put a lot of effort on governance, which means that we fund the creation of an organization dedicated to deploying the zone. We gave them some guidelines about the compositions of the boards, which have to include representatives from various sectors, industry, SMEs, university, research institute, municipalities. This is the minimum. We were also involved in creating the 2 main advisory committee for the zone, which is a scientific and innovation committee and a living environment committee. One of the first expectations that we have towards the organization was to define the organization's added value and develop a strategic plan for the next 3 years. The first 3 years, yes. And the ministry also worked with the municipality to develop land use plan that follow the best practice on livable environment and condition that fosters innovation. That's a pretty new steps in Quebec to develop these plans that is at the same time need for a better environment and foster innovation. Second solution was to enable the zone to build stronger foundation. And it was the commitment to work with the stakeholders on funding of major projects. We work with the federal government, and the concept is associated with the innovation center. In Europe, you call it technology infrastructure. And the main goal is to concentrate the research and innovation strengths with value-added equipment and services. We want these innovation centers to meet the need for entrepreneurial ecosystems and foster collaboration. That's the main goal of them. And I would say another solution was to create an environment in the ministry and with our governmental partners for the consolidation of different services, programs available for supporting their development. So we try to really consolidate the strengths and talk to each other and get the solutions easily available to them. So I see you there. I'll finish with that. I'll be happy to answer any question if there's any at the end. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Benjamin, very much. I like this feature that if I hit this, I show up. So for those of you online, keep an eye on your screens. That was very helpful and very interesting in showing the role of government and the important role of government in getting these going, and then hopefully guiding them along and letting them flourish on their own. I would like to now ask Jonathan Longwell, who is also online. He is the district director for Indiana County for State Senator Joe Pittman in Pennsylvania in the US, to please join us. And Jonathan, if you could share with us a little bit about Indiana County's experience with transition, including in the energy sector, and kind of really focusing on your organization's role in the transition process and some of the reflections that you might have on these experiences, that would be really helpful.
Okay. I think I can now safely say from the East Coast of North America, good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be with you to try and be succinct and stick to that 5-minute time frame as quickly as possible. I did drop several links in the chat to kind of help give you more details as I go along here. Yes, my state senator represents roughly 260,000 people in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We have all or portions of 4 counties that we represent, and Indiana County being kind of the home area is very true to that. I'd also like to thank Eric Lauber and the Technology and Entrepreneurship Center for the invitation and the opportunity to join today this esteemed panel. His team is doing great work in the community, providing growth to more than 400 residents in the county, and also utilizing existing business and community leaders in that. I know he was on earlier. Jose and the Ben Franklin Technology Partners work closely with tech, and the work that they're doing kind of helps serve as that conduit from local efforts to items on a larger scale across Pennsylvania. Real quickly, I want to talk about the history of Indiana County. It's probably best known as the hometown of Hollywood actor Jimmy Stewart. For any of you, as we get into the holiday season, if you've ever seen It's a Wonderful Life, that would ring true there. We're also known as the Christmas tree capital of the world, and so quite possibly you might have had an export of Indiana County in your home area at one point. Indiana County was known as a fossil fuel extraction and power generator. They were far and away the economic driver for this county's economy for years. The industry was so impactful that dozens of company towns existed throughout the county. These towns were run by the same companies that operated the coal mines. And so basically, employees' paychecks very often were going back into the company to cover rent, basic utilities, housewares, and often even Christmas presents. I also feel it's important to talk a little bit about my background because it's kind of part and parcel to what we have here, and it's very common for many in this region. So my father was actually a union coal miner for about 22 years, and when the coal mines, the union coal mines, closed in great numbers in the late 1990s, you had a lot of displaced workers looking for jobs, and our economy was not diversified enough to take on that sheer number of unemployed workforce. So my family, my parents made the decision. They're sort of down in Dell's region now. They're in Central Virginia, and they had the opportunity to move down there and take up roots. And that's you hear that story fairly common from folks in that area. However, since then, investments have been made to invest in our infrastructure, our roads, our water, our sewage, and also recently broadband, to make the county and the region continuously attractive to not just the industry that is out there in the market today, but also for the industry of the future as well. Here locally, as we've become more diverse, we're very blessed to have a very good hospital system that is independent, and they're working hard with our local university, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, to develop a medical program, a College of Osteopathic Medicine, to help identify and attract medical professionals and specifically doctors, not just to this region, but rural areas of Pennsylvania across the board, because we know to attract families and workforce to a region, healthcare is obviously a very important factor to all of that. I have the link there, but I want to talk about, we've got a group, it's called the Center for Economic Operations, also known as CEO. and that is based of 5 entities: our Indiana County Commissioners, which is our local government entity, our Chamber of Commerce, the previously mentioned IUP, our Indiana County Tourist Bureau, and our Indiana County Development Corporation. And that group works hard to not only gather properties, to market and add infrastructure to make it attractive for industries, but they also do a lot with our planning, our grants for opportunities as well. I know it was just previously mentioned by Benjamin, but I also have to do a call out to 2 programs here in the state level, the Keystone Opportunity Zones and the Keystone Innovation Zones. Here in Pennsylvania, those opportunities provide a way to not only bring state taxes and municipal taxes, reduce those for entities that we're looking to attract to the region. I see
Benjamin,
we're
you've
popping
got-
up here, so I will maybe skip over a couple of these links. The last thing that I will mention very quickly is the Homer City Redevelopment Project, which is the last link. It is the key example of what we're doing here in Indiana County. For a time, it was one of the largest coal-fired natural gas plants in the country. There is a group now taking that project over. It is the largest economic development project in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania history. It's estimated at a $10 to $15 billion investment. It's going to move from coal-fired to combined cycle natural gas generators that will market data centers to the region. We expect that to have more than 10,000 direct on-site construction jobs and approximately more than 1,000 total direct and indirect permanent high-paying positions in technology, operations, and energy.
Thank you very much for sharing this and not only talking about diversification, but bringing up the notion of regional attractiveness, which I think is really, really important. And I think what we've been hearing in some of these presentations, which I think is interesting and we really need to keep in mind, is the difference in scale between North America and Europe. It really is quite astounding. Benjamin, thank you. Jonathan, thank you very, very much. And I'd like now to turn to Laura Goldberg, who's the Senior Vice President of Strategic Initiatives at the Center for Houston's Future in Houston, Texas. Laura, what would be great is if you could sort of share with us a little bit about how your stakeholder mobilization process and your kind of bottom-up approach to the work you do has unfolded and what you would consider to be sort of critical steps or turning points that have made it a success. And I'll pop back up when you're hitting time.
Great, thank you. Good to see everybody. So I'll just start by saying the center, as we got into this process, brought to the table a reputation and background in doing consensus building across constituencies with a strong nonpartisan creation and background. And so I'm just going to dive into our specific work around clean hydrogen. So we really got into this space after working a couple of years broadly in energy transition, low carbon energy. We did some work as a standard for us with partners. We did a market sizing study with the University of Houston on energy transition opportunities, specifically looking at where Houston or the Houston region could lead. So the study came out with 4 specific areas: carbon capture, electrification, advanced plastics recycling, and hydrogen. And at that time, there was no, I would say, broad focus on hydrogen. The other areas were picking up some traction. So we decided at the center, we would lean into hydrogen. And then we thought we need some broad-based data analysis, consensus building, and to create a roadmap. So we worked again with partners, so including the Greater Houston Partnership, which is our Chamber of Commerce for the region. So in creating the roadmap, we drew input from literally more than 100 experts representing 70 companies and organizations. The companies were across the value chain. The organizations included NGOs. We did not have a specific government participation in the study, though we briefed government officials at all levels of government along the way, so they were in the loop. So we had some of their questions in mind. We took meetings with congressional offices, the mayor's office. So our goal at the start was to include a range of perspectives, to be agnostic on technology, and color of hydrogen, but to anticipate questions, needs from various constituencies, and to build as much consensus and really have an inventory of all the players that were already at the table and could be at the table when we rolled it out. So we made sure we inventoried our assets, our strengths. We touched on what would be needed for policy. We focused early on for the need for demand. And then we tried to hit all of the points that people who might be trying to sell this would want. So we looked at GDP growth, the job growth, emissions reductions, the potential for local pollution reductions. And so then when we released the report, we did roadshows, meetings again, back again with electeds across local, state, and federal governments in both parties. And the whole process really gave us an important understanding of what data points, results, and talking points were important to which constituencies. Some people simply just wanted to talk about job growth, GDP growth. Some people just wanted to talk about emissions reduction. So this roadmap became a jumping off point for different ways in which the center has done its work going forward. So for example, when the presidential administration at the time announced the Federal Hydrogen Hubs program, we were ready. We had this roadmap as the basis, and we, with GTI Energy and University of Texas, co-organized the grant application for what would become the High Velocity Hub, which in turn was selected for a $1.2 billion award. And the High Velocity Hub is owned and led by corporates and had strong bipartisan support. The work also formed the basis for our separate, what we call a Clean Hydrogen Steering Committee, that's been focused on creating a regional clean hydrogen ecosystem, and that has involved more than 30 companies across the value chain. One of our focuses there has been on developing international trade relationships. In essence, the center became known as the hydrogen connector and a convener for education, information, and best practice sharing. We brought together people and companies that have made bilateral deals or worked together on studies. And I'll wrap up by saying we also helped create the Texas Hydrogen Alliance, which is then in turn focused on state level policies and legislation. And that entity ended up getting 2 pieces of key legislation through our state legislation. So I guess the message just would be the importance of consensus, collaboration, and, you know, different models for different cities and regions. Houston, you know, has a long record of public-private partnerships and sometimes things that are led by business rather than government.
Great. Laura, thank you very much. And I'd like to just add one thing to your lessons, which is the importance of communication and making sure that not only you're constantly communicating and that you have the evidence and the support to back up what you're saying, but also the importance of tailoring that message to the audience that you're speaking to. I think that seems to have been really, really nicely done. So thank you for sharing this. before we move to our last roundtable, I would like to know if anyone in the room or online has any questions or comments or remarks or anything that they would like to share with respect to the presentations or experimentation in general, or not? Yeah, Cristina.
Yes, well, two comments. One, first comment, I think it's very relevant, something that Simone put on the table, that is the public opinion and the public acceptance for industrial transition. That I think that is something that I would say is quite new. So many years ago, I think that it was not so relevant. Maybe social media makes things more difficult in that sense. And also a second comment about policy experimentation, that I was listening to the presentation and to the examples, and I would say, well, that it's, in my opinion, it's really very difficult to make experiments in public in the public business. So we have a lot of people looking at us, and mistakes are not forgiven. So this idea of, well, it's my opinion, I don't know how you see that. So this idea of secure spaces for public experimentation, I think it's a very good idea. I'm not sure how this could be implemented, but I think that could be something to research.
Maybe that's something that this group can really think about, is how to create that secure space, because this issue of risk aversion and also being in the public eye and in the public sector, it makes it even harder to experiment. So maybe it's a point that we can work on together as a group. Anything else before we move on? Okay. So I'd like to move us to our last roundtable discussion. And it is about shaping collaboration. So we've been hearing about collaboration in general and throughout the day, but let's take a closer look at it, and really looking at it from the position of stakeholder engagement and political leadership. And one of the most often asked questions is, who drives transition efforts, and who is responsible for what within those efforts, and how you can mobilize stakeholders. So we've touched a lot upon this as we've been talking. Again, we're going to do an opening presentation, a panel, and then open the floor. And I'd like to then turn the microphone over to Tanja Juna from the Arctic Center at the University of Lapland in Finland for her presentation.
Thank you. So I will go to the next slide already. Hope it turns. Yes, I'm a little bit in a dual role, because I present, of course, the Arctic Center of the University of Lapland, but I have a long political career also as a decision maker in the Regional Council of Lapland. So we pretty much know the stakeholders and people living in Lapland. So because it's very, very little as well. So. But I don't go to the introductions of these organizations. We have met before also. But in Finland, leadership and collaboration at the regional and municipal level, including public hearings, they are defined by law. And the Regional Council is legally responsible for regional development. It prepares two key documents, a long-term regional plan for the next 30 years, which is really long time. And then we have also regional development program for 4 years. That's a shorter plan. In Lapland, we call this process the Lapland Agreement. It represents the shared commitment of key regional stakeholders to work toward common goals. And from the very beginning, stakeholders are involved through information gathering, identifying needs and participating in workshops, for example. And these discussions help define the main priorities and practical measures for implementation. An important part of this process is the evaluation of the previous Lapland Agreement, which highlights both success stories and areas needing improvement. Finally, the draft of the new agreement is opened for public consultation also. Everybody in Lapland can take part into this process. And final version is approved then by the regional board and Council of Lapland, where our political decision makers are sitting. So it's a very long process and a lot of different stakeholders are involved, but we call it as an agreement because we agree on issues there. But, and there comes the but, the biggest challenge is often how to maintain the focus of this agreement, as regional needs are very diverse, as you all know, and very broad. We are a very large region, and all this requires continuous dialogue. It's not only that we make this agreement, but also the dialogue continues after the agreement. And as we know, many compromises along the way are needed. There's another case example that I wanted to tell you about. Is a good example of joint leadership is in practice a case that happened in our Sea Lapland area a few years ago. When the closure of a traditional pulp factory was announced, a joint working group was very quickly established. It included representatives from national ministries, regional offices, the regional council, local municipalities, and the company itself. The group's task was to assess the economic and employment impacts of the closure. And in this case, the state regional office, we call it ELI Center, led the process, but strong collaboration among all parties made it effective, of course. Cities and municipalities prepared action plans, including budgets and timelines. The national ministry allocated targeted financial support and help carry out the plans. Employment officials were also involved, and together with the company, they assessed how many people would lose their jobs and made individual plans to support each affected worker. So in a sudden crisis like this, which is a huge crisis, of course, not only to the municipality or city itself, but the whole region, people naturally feel insecure and frustrated. Trust in the company is often lost immediately, and it is very hard to rebuild that trust. Still, through joint efforts and coordinated action, major damage was prevented and the region could start to recover more quickly. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, I'm coming from the northernmost university of the European Union. We live above the Arctic Circle, actually. So I consider that we have a special role in our region and community. We have the responsibility to provide knowledge to the surrounding society. I mean, we cannot just work in our offices, but we have to do the work together with the people living in our areas and to promote this good governance through this collaboration. So I would like to highlight 3 essential elements for implementing we call it just green transition. We need respect for local knowledge, livelihoods, and cultural values when planning and implementing this change. We need collaboration between researchers, communities, and decision makers to co-create sustainable solutions. And we need long-term commitment to fair funding, capacity building. That's very important nowadays when people are moving from the Arctic to the southern cities in the south, and follow up to ensure lasting impact. So respect, collaboration, and commitment, they are the foundation of a truly just and sustainable transition in the North. Thank you.
Tanya, thank you very much. I don't think there's any better way to sum it up than those three words of respect, commitment, and leadership. I would like to now turn to our final panel. As it is a completely in the room panel. And I'd like to start by asking Paolo Rosso, senior expert in the Emilia-Romagna region, to share with us more about how the region's innovation networks were built and how you've managed to maintain these strong partnerships with the private sector and other actors. And you have 5 minutes, and I don't have a way to show myself on the screen, so I'm gonna.
Thank you very much, Varinia. Yes, I try to stick on the 5 minutes. But the first, I would like to say something about the Emilia-Romagna region, not giving for granted that everybody knows about the region. The region is a region in the north of Italy, 4.5 million inhabitants, about 400,000 registered businesses. So we have SMEs as main element constituency of the local economy. Traditionally, the region has been strong in agriculture, agri-food sector, but that evolved into mechanics and a number of sectors, all of them based on a mixture of very small businesses with some leading companies a little bit larger than the others. We have a multipolar region, meaning that there are 9 provinces, 9 main towns along a road which is connecting east to west the region in the Po River flatland. Considering this structure, the way we were approaching innovation, coming to the point, I would like to address this by putting some light into 3 main moments where this system has been conceived and evolved over the time. These 3 moments are also, over the time, ways in which we intensify the way of engaging the stakeholders in the innovation and technology. Coming from quite far away from now, in 1985, the region decided to set up a regional technology transfer agency. The point at that moment was that most of the policy for industrial development was dealing with the industrial district development. There was no focus on innovation and technology transfer at the time. And the point was how to start working on that. And then from 1985 till early 2000, the effort was basically aimed at making the knowledge centers which were in place in the region, university, research centers, technology transfer centers, to talk with the companies, because small companies and these centers were not used to talk each other, and they don't even share the same language. So at that time, the point was how to engage small companies together with the knowledge centers, let's call them in that way, in order to pool their efforts and to work on technology improvement, technology innovation. I would say that in this stage, a key word can be a way of summarizing the concept was enabling the dynamics of cooperation between businesses, small businesses, and research centers. So the idea was to establish a common language, a common understanding. And this took quite a long time, no? About 15 years, simplifying a little bit the story. Then we enter into a second phase where we move from the idea of establishing linkages to a stage where we were trying to build a more systemic way of cooperation, networking between the different actors. And so in the decade between 2000 and 2010, more or less roughly, we started conceiving establishing an high-tech network, which was a way for building more connection between the businesses and the different actors which were in place already, but they were not able to connect. And this was a way for moving from mere networking into the construction, the building of an ecosystem, a real system working as such, having the different actors able to undertake common actions. And we enter into the third phase, very, very simplifying the scheme, which is from 2010 to now, where entering into the stage where the smart specialization strategy was a new concept taking momentum at the European level. There we were moving from a concept where we were dealing mostly with this ecosystem into something that was engaging more the local businesses and the centers into a system which were more bottom-up, more based on real empowerment of the different actors. And this was something that in the second half of the 15th, from 2017 onwards, led us to support the establishment of what we call clusters. We are already there. There are only 2 points I want to raise. There are some tools we used. One was a comprehensive pact for work and climate, which was a way of keeping all things together. And this was developed as a background for establishing this network. The second point is that we have quite a traditional law, very strong, fostering collaboration among actors. So it's something that is going on, a regional law for engaging the different stakeholders, which is supporting, of course, our development in the state. That's it.
Oops, thank you very much. It was very nicely organized into different phases. So we hope to see what the fourth phase might be. I'd like to now turn to Cristina Ojon, who is the Deputy Director General of the SPRI Group in the Basque Country. And Cristina, you have the Net Zero Basque Industrial Supercluster, and it would be great if you could share with us a little bit about this supercluster approach and the factors that have been key to its success.
Very well. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Varinia. Just let me introduce a bit also my region. Basque Country is a very small region in the north of Spain, around 7,000 square kilometers, not exactly Quebec, and around 2 million people, not exactly North Rhine-Westphalia, like 10% of your population, I guess. We are a strong industrial region. 25% of our GDP comes from industrial activity, and almost 40% if we sum up services related to the industry. The Basque Country has been considered as an example of industrial transition for many years. 40 years ago, after a very severe crisis, the Basque government, presently new at that time as a regional government, decided to implement new industrial policy based in technology and innovation, very similar as what colleagues from Emilia-Romagna, similar phases, similar approach, creating technology offer, creating clusters, and so I skip that part because it's almost the same. In fact, SPRI, the company that I represent, stands for Society for Promotion and Recovery of Industry, and was created 40 years ago to that end. I was thinking about this classification, this typology that Tamara shows, and I would say that we had industrial transition based in industry transformation, but also in new and emerging diversification towards new and emerging sectors, such as biosciences or aeronautics, but also we try to make our region attractive through economic diversification towards tourism. And we invested in something very strange from the economic department. That was a museum. The Guggenheim Museum was part of the recovery of the industrial activity of the region. And now we are facing a completely different industrial transition. The first point is that we are not at any crisis. So the economy in the Basque Country is quite relaxed. Of course, industry is suffering from the difficulties with the international crisis that all of us are suffering. But we are in a different situation. But the government knows that we have to produce a new industrial transition. In this case, it's more focused in this industrial transformation and also in the creation of new innovation and technological development in our region. And the Net Zero Basque Industrial Supercluster is an example, an initiative towards this part of the industrial transition, in this case, towards the decarbonization of our industrial activity. Since we are, our industry is a strong activity of the region. Almost 50% of our GHG emissions comes from industrial activity, and we need to decarbonize this activity. But we want to do that in such a way that we create a new industrial activity also, new innovative and solutions to opportunities based in technology and innovation. And to that end, we have created this structure that maybe is an experiment. This is the supercluster. And we are working with a new collaborative scheme in our region that the government, together with the two main energy industries in our region, Iberdrola and Repsol, we have created an alliance with the clusters that represent energy-intensive industries, plus the cluster that represents the companies that may provide solutions towards this decarbonization. And altogether, we have been working during the last 4 years in an international framework open to us by the World Economic Forum. And this idea of how to engage companies that you asked in your presentation. In our case, we know that with companies, you have one shot, so you cannot miss it because they come one day to the meeting, and if they don't receive value, they are not coming back. So we are trying to work with the clusters organizations in the day-to-day basis, and 4 times a year we organize a forum, the Industrial Forum for Decarbonization, where we meet the companies. Of course, we have projects going on. We are trying to put together between demand and offer, development, technology and innovation projects, and in that area, companies interact, of course. Enough. Okay. Okay, so enough. Happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Cristina, for sharing that, the background and the experience, and also answering a question. I'd like to now turn to our final panelist, which is Mr. Tobias Leberg, who's the mayor of the community of Saarbrück in North Rhine-Westphalia. And thank you very much for being so patient and being the last panelist. I'm sorry? Sabina. Oh, Sabina. Okay, well, almost. Penultimate. Sabina, yeah.
Yes, thanks. And I have the pleasure to bring the perspective of the municipality to this panel and to this conference. It is about regions, but there will be no prosperous region without the local municipalities, because as you all know, on the local level, we have a very strong identification between the entity and the people. So I'm mayor of a small community in North Rhine-Westphalia. It's in the north of Germany. I recognize most of the regions here in the north of the countries. And it's around about 200 kilometers south of Hamburg, or for those who are a little bit passionate for football, it's 50 kilometers north of Dortmund. And we have 7,000 inhabitants. And until the year 2010, we also had a munition depot. And that means it was an area of land with 90 hectares. This is approximately 125 soccer fields, or it's the same size like the castle park here of the Castle of Versailles. And when the Cold War ended, so in Germany and I think in most part of Western Europe, everyone felt like be surrounded by friends, and so German government decided to disarm the armed forces. And as a result of this development, political development, there was also the decision taken to close this munition depot. That was at that time one of the largest employers of our community, with 70 civil staff members. And so the community municipality was faced with a question, so what to do with this large area that consisted of 74 bunkers, earth bunkers with concrete walls thick up to 1 meter, so impossible to rebuild or to dismantle it. And at the same period, at the same date, the community started a large citizen science process to collect ideas for the local climate protection and adaptation plan. And at the end of this plan, with a large citizens participation process, there was a plan with almost 150 measures, very small ones, from changing bulbs in the private houses up to large-scale renewable energy production. And even at that time, you remember that was even before the nuclear disaster of Fukushima, the community decided to become greenhouse gas neutral by 2030. Therefore, large sources for renewable energy were needed. And so this led to the plan to integrate these premises of the former munition depot into this energy transition plan, and to transform the former munition depot to a large renewable energy park, the bioenergy park. And so as a municipality, you can do it in the easy way. You just make a tender procedure and you say, okay, I give it to an investor with an obligation to convert it into a generation park. But we did it differently. So the community did it on its own, because this climate protection and adaptation plan emphasized from the very beginning a very strong citizens' participation, but not only in terms of political participation, but also financial participation. And so instead of attracting big investors, citizens should get the opportunity to invest in the local renewable energy plants, and so to be part of this transition. The outcome of this process, and this is still ongoing process, was in addition education. This is most important about that, because it was clear that it's not enough to implement large capacities for renewable energy generation. but also to raise awareness among all people and of the community and for people of all ages. And so we implemented not only the renewable energy capacities, the power plants, PV installations, biomass, wind turbines, but also a learning side. And so in this learning side, from kindergarten, primary school, secondary school, even up to high school, students can learn the scientific fundamentals of energy generation. And so we hope that this will bring a really large transition and raise of awareness. And as an example, for example, we also offered education for adults, and so we have around about 2,000 households. And last year we had the thousands private PV installation on a private rooftop. So and nowadays we now we produce 4 times more energy than we consume, and so that means for the electricity we reached the goal quite ahead of the set target 2030. But now we are still going on with the heat transition that is still ongoing, where we want to transform by 2030 2/3 of our energy consumption for heating by renewable energies. So this is a very practical insight, I hope, how to tackle these issues on the very local level. And I hope I can give you some inspiration from a very local and very practical point of view. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That was really interesting and extremely useful, I hope. And also congratulations on meeting your goal before the year, the time, and being a net producer of energy. Sabine, thank you for being so patient. And if you could share with us a little bit about your stakeholder engagement practices and how they've been adopted and applied in Minnesota, that would be fantastic.
Thank you so much. And I'm super proud to call Saarbeck, the city of Saarbeck, a phenomenal model for all of Minnesota. The story of going to Saarbeck and finding this wonderful model goes back to 2015, when a group of Minnesota legislators went to Germany in order to find out more about the energy transition. It's a project that was supported by the German federal government in order to export, in a way, Germany's energy transition. And we just happened on Saarbeck. I remember sitting on the bus after the delegation of leading state legislators in Minnesota had visited the bioenergy park that Mayor Liebeck mentioned, and everybody was blown away. It was integrated. It was collaborative. There was an education aspect to it. There was not just there was the economic development aspect to it for the community. Everybody in the community was primed to benefit economically. It just was blowing all of us away. So one of the business leaders in the group said, we need a Saarbeck in Minnesota. We need to organize something to create a Saarbeck. And that draws our attention to municipalities. One of the parts, so we, at the University of Minnesota, we put together a grant application in order to bring together municipalities in Minnesota and in North Rhine-Westphalia to exchange notes on what works and what doesn't work. Because the fundamental belief is the energy transition needs to work for everybody at the local level, at the very local level, and especially rural Minnesota, rural North Rhine-Westphalia. And this little city of 7,500 demonstrates how that works. Really impressive. So what are the learnings that we've taken away from Minnesota? We have this phenomenal project, Climate Smart Municipalities. We meet virtually every month in order to exchange notes, what works, what doesn't work. We also have organized delegations of leaders, because you can see things that work for you, not because somebody tells you this works, but you visit with groups of leaders together from your own environment, people who make the decisions in your own space. You visit with the experts, with the ones who have really achieved something that you think you want. Economic development that is greenhouse gas emissions reduced, the greenhouse gas emissions, that is part of the future economy. We exchange notes, we become friends, and we know that we can trust the information that's there. What makes it so intriguing is we have developed this policy exchange into opportunities for rural Minnesota and urban Minnesotan communities to have interns, energy interns from our partner university, University of Applied Sciences, FH Münster, who have the best sustainability education that is available, who can have the structure of education and engineering education that allows them to do 5-month internships. And it's an enormously valuable capacity builder, because we always have to think about one motto that, or learning that the former city administrator of the city of Morris, that has aimed to become Minnesota's Zabek, taught me. He said, Sabina, at the university, you always talk about scaling things up. Let me tell you what you really need to do. You need to scale things way down so that it works for us at the rural level, places like Morris. And this is, for me, super inspiring to be able to sit at the same table as the mayor of Zabek and to demonstrate that this little village and the collaboration that exists between the ministry and between the university and between the businesses and the Chamber of Commerce and young people of all ages works to inspire people to make change, walking towards the future. So thanks.
Thank you very much. And you've definitely continued to highlight the value and the importance of this experience in Zabek, but also how experiences in the US, in Germany are in Europe and Germany are applicable in North America and the US, and the importance of working really locally, but also keeping a higher level perspective. So thank you very much for that. I would like to ask if there's online and in the room, if there are any comments or questions before we close.
I would have a quick one. Oh, sorry. I would have a quick one on funding, because you said you didn't want to attract private investors, but nevertheless, I mean, all what you have done, I guess, requires some substantial investments. So you have asked, if I understood correctly, also for the citizens' participation financially. But I mean, how did you all meet? I mean, for all the investments that you needed?
It's local investment. For example, for the biomass plant, there were 16 farmers who said we want to run a biomass plant, and then they founded a company with 16 farmers, and now they are the owners of the company, and they bring the corn to the and all the substrates to the biomass plant. The largest participation is the cooperative of citizens. They started with an investment for a PV power park in this bioenergy park and a wind turbine, and they collected 4 million euro at that time. It was a huge amount, and so the demand was even several times higher. So they could have get more members of this cooperative if there would be a higher investment, and they are now still growing with further wind turbines. So the money is there. You need to get it. Yeah, it's not only on the financial market. The people are ready to invest, but they need trust. They don't give it to a large company and they say, I have no influence. They say, okay, it's a cooperative and this is the board of the cooperative and I know him, because he's a citizen of the same village and I trust him. And that's about trust. And I think this is important. We heard or learned this afternoon for several transition issues.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that point of trust. I think that's really critical and definitely a driving factor. I would like to ask the people online if you have questions. Unfortunately, we're very much out of time. Could you please put them in the chat and we will make sure we send you responses. And I apologize for that we can't take the questions right here and right now. I would like to, just before we have an opportunity to have a refreshment and continue speaking more offline, turn this over to Jeroen for some details regarding tomorrow.
So I realize I stand in between us now and the networking event that we are no longer allowed to call a nice cocktail. So yeah, we have half a day left tomorrow for the colleagues here in Paris. We start at 8:30 with the coffee and croissant, and then kick off of the sessions at 9. And as you're all aware, this is the first seminar in a series of 4. So we have 3 seminars coming up. The next one will address the topic of climate and energy transition, and will be hosted by the Industrie- und Handelskammer Nordwestfalen in Münster. So we're really grateful for that. That event is coming up in March 26. 2 more seminars, one on demography, labor, employment and skills, and one on technological change will be hosted in Canada and US later and in 2026. So details will come up at a later stage. Verinia, back to you.
Thanks, Jeroen, for that update. I'd like to thank everyone for their participation, for the questions, for the thoughts. I'd like to see the conversation keep on going. So let's have a nice cocktail, even though we're not allowed to call it one anymore, and network and enjoy the remaining time. And we'll see you tomorrow morning. Yes, Paulo.
Just a question, where we are going to see tomorrow morning?
So thank you very much. I think so for people in the rooms, tomorrow we are actually going to meet in a different room. So as Jeroen mentioned, there will be breakfast available as of 8:30. I will be at the entrance welcoming you. So it would be great if you could arrive at 8:30 or 8:45. I will always be there, and we will have colleagues along the way guide you to the room.
And we will guide you now.
And we'll guide you now to the
Very
cocktail.
important.